Wayne Newton is 83 years old, and he's still working. Some fans think this is great news because they get a rare chance to see Mr. Entertainment perform again. But other people believe Newton is still singing in his 80s because he needs the money to survive, not because he loves it. This idea has left fans wondering how an amazing talent like Newton, who was so successful as a singer, ended up with one of the saddest stories of life on stage. He was actually called Mr. Las Vegas. Even though he had a huge number of sold-out shows, he ended up losing all his money, got into debt, and spent years in and out of court fighting tons of legal cases. Let's take a look at how Newton became a warning story and still managed to pick up the pieces to keep his reputation meaningful. Right from a start in Norfolk, Virginia, Newton was all about music. He was born with a perfect pitch. But even as a kid, he worked to get better and learn more skills instead of just relying on natural talent. When he was only 6 years old, he was learning the piano, guitar, and steel guitar. This was even more amazing when you knew that young Newton was fighting really bad asthma as a kid. His health problem was so serious that his doctor told his parents they would have to move somewhere else for Newton to have a better quality of life. Keep in mind, his parents weren't rich at all. By the time the family moved to Phoenix, thanks to the doctor's advice, Newton's father was working 2 jobs to support the family. Having a father who was working super hard to put food on the table pushed Newton to take action. Seeing how driven Newton was, his parents decided that if he was going to keep performing, his older brother would have to team up with him so he could watch over and take care of young Newton, who was barely a teenager at the time. Soon after getting to Phoenix, the brothers heard about a local television talent show called Lou King Rangers, and they signed up for the competition. And this was not an easy talent show. As Newton explained himself, a group of 2 kids had to do 6 shows a night against groups that had 6 and 8 people. And it was a spinning stage, so there was no setup time or breakdown time. When it was time to be on stage, you pushed a button and it spun, and boom, you're on. He and his brother performed playing steel guitar, and they ended up winning the talent show. Newton said that it was a great experience and it gave him amazing training. After winning the competition, the owner of Cool TV, Tom Chauncey, who also aired the talent show, gave the brothers their own television show, Rascals in Rhythm, and became a mentor to them. And on the weekends, Newton and his brother as the Rascals in Rhythm were performers in traveling road shows of the Grand Ole Opry and on ABC TV's Ozark Jubilee, which even had President Dwight Eisenhower watching. This exposure got the brothers way more gigs than they could have imagined, and they were still going to school. Newton himself went to North High School at the time. You would think that with all the time he had to spend on rehearsals and actual performances, he would be at best an okay student. Not this kid. He was the sophomore class president and a member of the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps. No wonder he was making huge progress in his music career. For him, whatever he wanted to do, he gave his best and more. But towards the end of his junior year of high school, Newton would make a surprising decision. An agent from Las Vegas had seen him and his brother performing on their local TV show and decided to take a chance on them. They not only passed the audition, but impressed the agent so much that he signed the siblings right away and scheduled their first performance in Las Vegas at the Fremont Hotel. The boys, just like they always did amazingly, and by closing night were offered a 1-year contract to keep performing in Las Vegas. And at this crossroad, Newton made his choice to leave North High School just before finishing his junior year to follow his music career. Of course, this wasn't a decision his parents were happy with, but Newton was determined, and off to Las Vegas he and his brother went. This decision would later turn out to be important for his career. One day at the Fremont Hotel, the agent who had signed Newton told him about Jackie Gleason, who had been on break and was now coming back on the air. Gleason was passing through Phoenix and had decided to hold a luncheon there. Luckily, Newton had gotten booked to perform at the luncheon, but he had a problem. He didn't know any Irish songs, so he had to learn the song Danny Boy on the way from Vegas to Phoenix. He finally got to the luncheon, performed his set, and ended with Danny Boy. Gleason was so impressed he stood up and said to Newton, "Don't go on any other television show before you go on mine." Through Gleason, Newton would get his first chance on national television. But since they had no hit record, all they had going for them was that time slot on Gleason's show. So to keep staying in New York, their manager got them a job at the Copacabana Lounge. It was while they were still working with Gleason that Bobby Darin, a music producer, signed Newton to Capitol Records and started working with him to make his first record. The first song Newton did with Darin was called Heart. Then they worked on Danke Schoen. Danke Schoen became a huge hit, reaching the top 15 in the Hot 100. His songs were becoming major hits of pop culture, and many other famous celebrities such as Lucille Ball, Jack Benny, and others helped him rise by using him as their opening act for their different shows. Newton's fame soon got to the point where big media companies offered him his own show, but he rejected them because he didn't want his career to be controlled by others. Around this time, Newton and his brother ended their partnership. They had worked together for almost 10 years before the split, and this was what Newton had to say about it. My brother never liked being in show business. So around 1970, he said to me, "I don't really want to do this." I said, "Why are you doing it?" He said, "My parents told me to look out for you." I said, "Well, I'm a big boy now, so if you want to leave, go on and leave and do what you want to do." Which is what he did. Now Newton was by himself, and the only way to go was up. And after the shocking death of Elvis Presley and several other older stars in the industry, the spot of the biggest entertainer in Las Vegas was wide open. To be honest, Newton was the only person who could fill that role. He was headlining major events, and even held the record for the biggest crowds at those shows. In fact, he was called the biggest moneymaker in the history of Vegas. Nobody draws crowds like that week in, week out. Not Elvis, not Sinatra. There's just no comparison. When you're competing with Elvis and Sinatra, then you've probably made it big enough. Newton signed a new contract to work 36 weeks a year for Howard Hughes' Suma Hotels. This great deal gave him the money to buy a ranch home where he raised prize Arabian horses. But as the years went by, Newton became more and more restless. He wanted to be more independent and not have to answer to a boss. To be clear, he had no problems with his boss, Howard Hughes, and there wasn't any news of bad blood between the two. Newton was just ambitious for more freedom, which was his right for sure. So he began to look for ways he could improve the money situation he was in. One of the investment opportunities that caught his interest was the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. Getting his hands on the hotel, however, turned out to be more stressful than he expected. For one thing, because he had never been great at managing his money and had left many important money decisions over the years to people who didn't have his best interests at heart. Another problem was that Newton was brilliant when it came to entertainment, but had never been interested in the business side of things. And when it came to buying businesses, he was out of his depth. For 2 years, Newton was part owner of the Aladdin Hotel in a partnership that led to a bunch of lawsuits and a failed attempt by him to buy the entire hotel. Before long, he was falling into money ruin. In a bid to save the situation, there are rumors that Newton had dealings with people who lived on the other side of the law. The rumors were reported in the media, and Newton wasn't happy, so he ended up suing NBC News for libel, claiming the network had reported that he partnered with the mafia to buy the Aladdin. In court, Newton won the lawsuit at first and was awarded $19 million in damages. But NBC appealed the ruling, and it was decided that there was no proof suggesting that the rumors had been spread either meanly or on purpose. So Newton got nothing in the end. However, what seemed like just a loss in court turned out to be more. In 1992, Newton filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy to reorganize an estimated $20 million in debts, much of which he said was piled up while suing NBC for libel. Other people he owed were the IRS, which stated that he owed hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. Newton had hoped he would get some of it with the money he got from winning the case. Since that didn't work out the way he had hoped, he decided to work on another way to deal with his money collapse. As the end of the year got closer, he joined Tony Orlando, and the two opened up a venue together in the city. The venue at first went by the name of the Talk of the Town. Both of them had believed that with their combined star power, they were going to be able to pull crowds to fill the 2,000-seat capacity venue. Unfortunately, they had really overestimated their reach and got pretty much under 1,000 people showing up. It wasn't long before the partners realized that they weren't making enough money to pay their lease, which was about $2 million. And the problems didn't stop at money. Newton had put himself in a very awkward situation, which made Orlando furious with him. For some reason, Newton had hidden recording devices in a private room that he and his partner shared. The spying devices were discovered by Orlando's son, and this made him even more upset. With trust between the two partners destroyed, Orlando decided it was better for them to break off their partnership as soon as possible, which they did, and Newton chose to take over their venue for himself. By the beginning of the 2000s, the name of the venue was changed to the Wayne Newton Theater. Despite the ups and downs of Wayne Newton's life, you can't help but see that the man has found himself a sense of peace, still in good health, doing what he loves doing best.